And then, hey guys, Rob here with McDojoLife. So I am excited. This conference has been nothing but amazing. It's allowed me to talk to so many different great martial artists all in one place. And today's guest, or right now's guest, because I've already done a couple interviews today, but is Mike Swain.
Yes.
So in case you guys do not know, Mike Swain is a legend in Judo. Legend.
It's a strong word.
No, it's not a strong word at all. It's a true word. But yesterday we were at the conference, and I actually was like, I'm sitting down, and all of a sudden I'm like, oh, it's the guy. It's the guy. Yeah. So, but see, I'm not the only one who agrees. See, this guy agrees. Mike Stewart agrees. Legend.
Thank you.
But what I want to do is I just want to kind of because I post to all different arts.
Right.
And so some karate guys might not know who you are. Taekwondo guys might not know.
Sure.
So if you can just do me a favor, just take the time and just go over your career and how you started in the martial arts all the way to where we are now.
Okay.
I know that's a lot, right?
I'll try to do this fast.
Take your time, man.
Okay.
No rush.
Yeah. So in a nutshell, I started when I was a kid, 8 years old, in Judo. Judo's Judo. It's worldwide. It's only one discipline. There's only one way to do it. The rules change as we go along, but it's still Judo.
Yeah.
Throughout the world. So I basically, when I was in high school, I went to San Jose State University mainly to keep training in Judo to make my first Olympic team, which was 1980, which was boycotted. By Jimmy Carter was the president.
He boycotted the Olympics, period, or just Judo?
Well, we boycotted the whole Olympics because in 1980, the Russians invaded Afghanistan. It's kind of ironic.
Yeah.
And then, 20 years later, the Americans invaded Afghanistan. So,
damn Afghanistan, y'all got it wrong.
Whatever, it's politics. So I made the 4 Olympic teams: 1980, 1984, 88. And 92.
Holy shit.
Yeah, so I'm a 4-time Olympian. And then I coached in 96 Olympics. And now, I'd rather watch Olympics on TV. I don't want to go.
So that's incredible though. So 4, like most people like getting 2 in their lifetime is.
Yeah, it's a tough feat, but most people, they ask me, oh, you've been in the Olympic. I just say, yeah, I was on the Olympic team, because when you say, oh yeah, I was on 4 Olympic teams, they kind of look at you and go, yeah, right. Maybe he's not telling the truth.
Yeah, this guy's full of shit.
Yeah. But it's all documented. You can look it up. So I won the world. My biggest acclimate, I guess, is I was the first American, or actually the first person from the Western Hemisphere to win the World Championships. That was in 1987 in Essen, Germany. That was the year before the 88 Olympics. So I was ranked number 1 going into the 88, but I ended up only in bronze. So
only in bronze,
When you're ranked number 1, you want to win the gold.
Oh yeah, of course.
So yeah, I mean, I've had a great career, traveled all over the world, met some great people, trained with a lot of great people from all over many different countries. In Judo, there's a European circuit that a lot of the top fighters, or all the top fighters, have to go to. And back then it was France, Germany, East Germany was back in that time. I've been, trained in Russia. And then you would kind of float back around and, end up back in the US. Most of my, when I came out of high school, I decided, okay, I want to be a great Judo player. Well, it's hard to do it in this country because there's not a lot of, there's not a lot of schools. There's not a lot of very top competitors. And there's top competitors, but they're spread out.
Now, you said you did Judo in college?
I did, yeah.
So there was that school offered a program.
San Jose State, was probably one of the only colleges that offered kind of a partial scholarship.
Nice.
They didn't have a lot of money, but they gave a little bit just to get me to come. And I'm glad I came because it was a great place to train. But I used it as just a base, because my true training, I lived in Japan for 3 or 4 years.
So you went from the source.
Yeah.
Okay,
yeah.
I got you.
And honestly, if you're going to make it to the highest level, to the Olympics now, I feel like you have to go to Japan to train. Just like the cyclists go to a certain place, the divers go to a certain place.
Of course.
It's you just seek out the best.
So, and your lineage is who?
My lineage is UNESCO. I started Judo with a couple of his students, a guy named Rick Miola, Tom Sebasti. I'm from New Jersey.
Okay.
So I grew up in New Jersey, and that's where I started judo. And Yanni Unesca, who was from Japan, came here, opened up a school. So he was very strong and very good coach. And I learned from him. Unfortunately he passed away a few years ago. And then I came to San Jose, and then I went back to Japan.
Okay. Yeah. I got you. That's awesome, man. So your career is extensive. You have a very extensive career in judo.
Yes.
And I obviously, when you go to the Olympics 4 times, no big deal, just a few bronzes. Yeah. But like in that time, I'm sure that you've had an opportunity to learn maybe other arts or anything like that? Or are you just focused on judo?
To be honest with you, when you're doing judo, you were just focused on judo. And remember, back in the 80s, there was no Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. There was no, there was karate, there was taekwondo. In the martial arts world, they were the, in America.
Yeah, you're talking about in the States.
In America, they were the top.
Yeah, of course.
But for judo, it's the Japanese, the Koreans. Back then it was Russia, but then it broke up into 12 or 15 different countries. And honestly, all those countries are probably one of the strong. They're all strong in judo, and it has a good, not a good, but a sambo. Has a big influence in judo. But mainly, judo's judo. That's where jiu-jitsu, Brazilian jiu-jitsu came from. It came from judo.
I've heard this 2 different ways. So I've heard that judo derived from jiu-jitsu, and I've heard that jiu-jitsu derived from judo.
No, well, it's true. Yeah, Japanese jiu-jitsu. You're right.
Yeah.
Judo came from Japanese jiu-jitsu.
Yes.
Jigoro Kano.
Yes, sir.
He was, he's the man. Yeah,
the man.
But he was like, he was a scholar.
Yeah,
like
most lineages actually follow right back to him.
Right.
Exactly.
Yeah. He was from, Tokyo University, and it's like Stanford, Harvard.
Yeah.
He was an academic, and, he learned, he was a jiu-jitsu practitioner, and there's different groups, and, he took the striking, it's not like he took the striking out of it. I guess he did. He took the throws, the chokes, the hold downs, he took what he thought would make a good learning experience, because back then jiu-jitsu was more brutal, right? It's more fighting. So the spirit of judo, the philosophy is more of an educational way of life type of thing. Judo, gentle way, maximum efficiency, minimum effort, mutual beneficiary. That's like the philosophy that he developed. And quite honestly, that's the philosophy that the Brazilian jiu-jitsu
of course
took. Took. That's what it took.
Shots
because their lineage, their fathers and grandfathers, they took the ground to a whole another level as well. They took what they were really good at, and they it's amazing, what they've done.
And it's still evolving today, which is incredible to me for a martial art to evolve that. Yeah,
that's right. Yeah. Obviously they had a lot of help with the UFC.
Yeah, of course.
Well, catapulted the market.
Well, I think that it's almost like backing yourself into a corner in a way. And I don't mean that in a negative way. I mean, almost like forcing the art to grow by saying, hey, we're going to put this against the metal of every other art and see what happens. Right. And if you don't evolve like it, which is incredible to me, because you see things like wrestling taking such a high stance now in the UFC, and which means that there's an evolution in wrestling, which in turn is going to force other arts to evolve, like karate right now. Like you see guys like Michael Venom Page, Stephen Thompson, Leona Machida taking karate and elevating it.
That's right.
Because they have to. Yep. I think that's a beautiful thing. And then of course, like in terms of judo, someone like a Ronda Rousey taking that front seat and going, "Yo, this is me showing the art."
Showed how it works.
Yeah.
I don't think any one art is like dominating everything. You have to have a little bit of everything, but for sure she took and showed how judo can work in those situations.
Definitely, which is impressive, especially since judo, I wouldn't say 100%, but I'd say primarily is a gi art. A lot of guys who do judo are doing gi and how to handle the gi. And as a matter of fact, in the jiu-jitsu academy that I train at, we actually even call it getting judo grips, which would be like lapel, elbow, which I think is a fairly general term for getting basic grips. But she was able to do that with no gi, which is very impressive.
Which is more difficult.
Getting a hold of somebody and hip tossing them when there's not something to hold on to.
I tend to, when I teach seminars, or even here, when we did the seminar at the Cobar, at this symposium, it was, I always do it with no gi. Because it's
impressive.
It's better because then they understand it at a deeper level. Because if you bring in the gi, it gets very complicated. How to grip and do this, but it all works the same with or without a gi. But it can get complicated to teach with a gi,
which is kind of funny because like one of my instructors back in the day when I used to train karate. We trained without the uniform, without a traditional karate uniform. We had karate pants and t-shirt.
Right.
And it was a freestyle karate, which is basically like glorified kickboxing. It was a little bit more along the lines of like Bill Wallace, Joe Louis type kickboxing. Yeah. And so that was the art that I grew up in, which is funny because I get made fun of by karate guys all the time. You don't know any katas? You didn't do karate. It's like I did like a freestyle karate. We didn't do any katas. We just sparred. We literally just punch each other in the face all the time, which is why my memory is shit and why I ruined my modeling career. But like. But then all of a sudden that mentality was bred into me early, like the gi was a useless thing. And then I went to take jujitsu, which has only been like 8 years. And then for that many years of my 22 years of my existence in martial arts, I always believed that the gi was a negative thing. And then whenever I got to the Jiu-Jitsu Academy, my instructor at the time, the only reason I signed up is because he like submitted me like 50 times. And I was like, I got to be here. I got to know how to do that to people. But he opened my eyes a little bit more to the gi and understanding that you're not going to be fighting random butt naked people. And if you you do fight random butt naked people, then there's something wrong with your life. Right. Like, why are you around these people? Like, who are these people? You know what I'm saying? Yeah. And then whenever I understood that and I started just looking around and opening my eyes a little bit more to what people were wearing, especially here in a colder climate. Yeah, there's always a jacket. There's always a jacket. There's always a thicker shirt, a thicker outfit. And that's because it's cold. Yeah. And so like me being from Florida, it was so easy for me to go, it makes sense not have a uniform. But then when it got cold and then like half the country's cold all the goddamn time, so you look around, you're like, oh, well, that makes all the sense in the world, so I think it's impressive. Somebody did have a question. Yes. Let's see what they had to say. They said, have you noticed a difference in judo with the rise of competitions and the competition mindset like BJJ?
Yes, absolutely. Because probably what they're referring to is the international judo, the rules, are constantly changing.
Yeah, actually, I know people were giving them a lot of crap because of certain things. Yeah.
Yeah. And
which I think they had some rule about MMA.
Oh, well, the hierarchies of the International Judo Federation are against MMA. I don't know. I don't know why. I know why. I think because they're more traditional and they view MMA as a, again, like judo is more of an educational learning experience where, in their mind it's for kids, that are just much like jiu-jitsu, present jiu-jitsu. Where they're learning from each other, and MMA is pretty brutal, like two girls in a cage, and they're beating the crap out of each other. So I understand the value and the learning of that, because I competed at a high level, but I'm not so sure a kid or a parent understands, watching a cage fight. And what that means, it's just like basketball.
So do you think that the implementation of, because the MMA rule, if I remember correctly, is if you're doing MMA that you're not allowed to compete in judo? Is it something like that?
Yeah. Well, what they're trying to do is stop the UFC from grabbing all their stars. If they have a Ronda Rousey, say, before she was left to judo, right? Like if she didn't have a big MMA contract, right? Maybe she would have kept just going in judo.
Made judo.
Yeah, but at that time, they didn't have a lot of money. That's, if I was her, I would have left too. Yeah. Now there's some pretty decent prize money in judo, so you can travel around and make decent money. But at the same time, it costs a lot of money to travel. So it's professional, but it's not really professional.
I gotcha. I understand that. Well, that's the same thing jiu-jitsu is going through right now. Yeah. Because jiu-jitsu is going through that problem where they're just now starting to do these bigger payouts. They're doing these bigger dollar tournaments, right? Where they're doing because Metamoris was one of the first ones, right? But Metamoris ripped a whole bunch of people off and like you left a little bit of a bad taste. Yeah. But the idea of it was enough to spark what now is like EBI, right? Like the combat jiu-jitsu stuff is big now. Guys are getting paid higher dollar stuff. Guys like Gordon Ryan and Nicky Ryan are out there. They're making they're making waves to try to make the sport more entertaining.
Yeah.
And do you think something like that is going on with judo right now, like where it's trying to be a little bit more of an entertainment?
Well, yes, because they have they have a great, like if you go to internationaljudofederation.org, you can see all the fights for free. Like everywhere, okay. There's like 20 Grand Slams happening all over the world, and high level, really, high res. It's like watching ESPN. You can see the fight, you can get close up. They have cameras. They have all the professional equipment. So it's great, but I don't think the top money is trickling down into the fighters. You know what I'm saying? It's just that's the same as the UFC.
See, that's the game that's the promoter game, though. So,
right, exactly.
And I have a theory about UFC, not to get off track of judo in any way, but I have a theory about UFC. I think that if they had less shows with less fights on the card, that they would be able to afford to pay their fighters more.
Right.
Because if you remember boxing, exactly. If you remember boxing. Like I still today, like how many fights is on a boxing card? Because they have so many rounds, which is understandable.
Right.
You might get more fights or more money because there's less fighters.
Right.
Less people to pay. Yeah. And so I think that if UFC would do that, I think they would probably do better. And another thing, this is just a personal tangent of mine, but that deal that they made with Reebok was utter horseshit.
Right.
And taking away the fighters' ability to have sponsorships is why so many which is what's created the environment now, I think.
Right.
The free agency environment where fighters are just like deuces and they're just going somewhere where the money is.
Yeah.
Which you're talking of Ronda Rousey, I think she was very intelligent to go, I could keep getting hit in the head for less money, or I can go over here and pretend to get hurt for more money.
Right.
So.
Yeah, I mean, if you're in the NBA, you're sitting on the bench, you're still making money.
Oh no! So I'm riding the bench for a couple $1 million.
Yeah. So it's a little different when you're a judo guy trying to travel all over the world and you don't have the money to do that. Yet you have to do it to qualify at these tournaments to make the Olympic team to win the prize money.
Yeah.
So
how did you afford it? Because when you did it, it wasn't even close to what it is now.
No, there wasn't a lot of money in it. And it was truly almost amateur. But in the beginning, of course, I had help from my parents a little bit.
Yeah, nice.
Then I went to Japan, trained, living on peanuts. And then I had a little help from the federation, USA Federation, not a lot, but enough to get me to the tournaments.
Nice.
But there was less tournaments. I didn't have to travel to 15 different countries. I would go away, fight in 2 or 3 East Germany, Russia, maybe stay in Europe for a month, and then come back but they helped a little bit. But yeah, I don't, and then I got a job, I worked for a company called Chips
Jobs,
Technologies, which in a way they were sponsoring me, because they would let me go off for 6 to 8 weeks a year.
That's a beautiful
thing. And they would keep me on the payroll.
Yeah, that's a beautiful thing, because that is a difficult thing for a lot of competitors, is to find that fine line of, hey, I need to have a job,
right?
But you also need a job that's going to be understanding when you have to go and leave for a week,
right.
2 weeks at a time.
It was called the Olympic Job Program, really, is what it was. Yeah, and then my company joined that, and then
they did. The company joined it just for you,
pretty much. Yeah.
Wow, man,
they were a startup in Silicon Valley. It was
okay, so you run by hippies. Yeah, they were down for the new stuff, man.
That's right.
Let's see. Somebody was giving me a panel. Who was Rob talking to? It's Mike Swain, 4-time Olympic medalist. Did you medal all 4 times?
No. It's a bronze medal, and I won the worlds in '87. I did take two silvers in the world. So I've competed in the world finals 3 times in a row. And so back then, the world championships were every 2 years.
Yeah.
And it was a world championships.
Yeah.
It wasn't like, in New Jersey.
The World Championships of Jersey.
Exactly. It was over true. There was, like 100 countries competing. Japanese, Korean, all the top guys were there. And then it was every 2 years were the Worlds, and then the Olympics were every 4.
Yeah, but I mean, even going to the Olympics, because you had to go through trials. You had to go through the Olympic trials.
Yeah,
so it wasn't like they were just like, we need a judo guy, Mike. We'll take Mike.
Yeah, I had to win the trials, the whole thing. And now there's no trials. But so that's where the IJF, or the International Judo Federation, really made it tough on Americans, because now only the top 18 people in the country. So not the country, in the world, can compete in the Olympics.
Karate is up this year.
Yeah.
For the 2020 Olympics, from 2020, right? 2020 Olympics. Karate is going to be the first. It's a trial period. This is going to be the first year that karate's ever represented. And I think that they do have sparring, but I know that they have kata. But it's represented for the first time, right? Which is incredible to me to think how old that art is.
Right.
But
they're probably going to have to qualify too, maybe. I'm not sure.
Same thing. You have to be the top.
Yeah.
You have to be the top because of they're going through the WKF, the World Karate Federation. Right. And so you have to be the top X amount of guys to be able to make it.
And it's tough because all the judo is centered in Europe. Yeah. Like all the tournaments, the big tournaments that you need to go to get the points, it's either Europe or Asia. There's not many in South America, not many in North America. So that means the Western Hemisphere has to travel and all the costs of getting to these tournaments would make it tough.
Well, I think that it does make the fighters hungrier though.
It does.
You know, if you have to like go through all this crap to get there, you're not going to be like, oh, I'll just take silver and be happy. You're like, no, I'm going to win. I'm broke. I need sandwiches. You know, my old coach for sport karate, back in the 70s when it was televised, they were sponsored by Budweiser. Yep. And that they used to fight on stages and stuff back with Bill Wallace and Joe Louis.
PK something.
Yeah. You know what I'm talking about. Yep. And so he said that when he used to go to these tournaments, he had to go to some certain tournaments throughout the year. He said that he would spend all the money that he had to get there, and he had no money to get back. Right. So if he didn't win, he had to walk.
It changes your mentality.
I agree. Let's see here. Somebody said I had a good point. Go me. Let's pat myself on the back. Just said, great point, Rob. Smaller cards equal bigger payouts. We're talking about the UFC thing we were talking about, as well as your point of having sponsors rather than forcing them to wear Reebok. Yeah. You're really limiting their ability to make more money, especially the lesser known fighters. And just to toss it out there, I know what the UFC was trying to do. And I get it. They were trying to be more like a baseball, soccer, basketball. Right. But those are team sports. They didn't think about the individual sports that aren't like that.
That's right.
Like NASCAR.
Yeah.
Or ping pong.
Right.
You know, you think like everybody in ping pong is wearing the same shit? Yeah. No. The sponsors are like, I buy this paddle and I wear their clothes, and everybody's like, I buy this paddle. You know, like giving them that freedom, especially what I don't think a lot of people saw was stuff that happened in the background, because we tend to forget that there are other people involved in sports other than the athletes. Yeah, especially in fighting. Cutmen, you know, by cutman, somebody like Stitch. I'm not sure if you're familiar with Stitch. Yeah. You know, one of the greatest cutmen in the business, but they basically cut his balls off when they were like, "Yo, you can't have sponsors." Right. And like he didn't give a shit about Reebok. Yeah. He's trying to pay his bills. And so that's why he had to leave. And then the handler, the guy who handles the fighters, make sure they're where they're supposed to be when they're supposed to be there. Right. That's a hell of a job when you're dealing with all those personalities. They cut off his. Yeah. And it's like, dude, why would you do that? I just don't get it. Like in judo, do you guys have like available sponsorships and stuff like that you can represent with patches?
You can, yeah. But again, the IJF is doing the same thing. They're, now, only this sponsorship can only be in this big. Before, before there was nothing allowed because it was traditional
no
white.
Sponsorship.
It was only a white gi. That's it. Then they went to white and blue gi, so that they, at least if you're watching it on TV, you
contrasting,
can figure it out. And then the sponsors, then they said, okay, if you want to be a sponsor of the IJF, you got to pay whatever $50,000. If you want to sponsor with the gis or the mats. Okay. You got to pay 50, which is kind of high because how are you going to make that money back? You know what I mean? So it's similar to the Olympic Games. You know, they have all these Pepsi, Coke, all the top tier, right? Who paid millions of dollars, and NBC, made millions of dollars. But then, we need mats for judo. Oh, well, they should just give us those mats, because
that doesn't cost money at all to make mats.
Right. Okay, so I'm going to give you the mats, but then do I get anything out of it? Do I get any sponsorship? Oh no, you got to give us some, $5 million if you want to be able to be sponsored. So then they realize, okay, we need second tier sponsorship, and we got to give them a little bit. So it's the same thing, yeah.
And now you Swain mats is a staple in martial arts. A lot of people have been on Swain mats or dollar arm mats. So how did that come about? How did you get into the mat business?
So when I stepped off the mat, literally in Essen, Germany, 1987, when I won the Worlds, this guy approached me and just said, "Hey, I would love you to endorse. Trying to get some mats into America. Would you endorse it?" And I said, "Yeah, sure." Then he came over to America and I met him, and I found it kind of intriguing. You know, at that time, you know, the martial arts was kind of starting to take off, but mostly karate, taekwondo.
Yeah.
And I was working in the chip business, and you know, kind of, I wasn't really a nerd, so I was like, all right, I don't want to do this, but you know, maybe I was, you know, intrigued with the mats because I grew up on them. So I just started distributing.
Nice.
You know, the mats they're developed in Europe and manufactured in Europe. So started develop, you know, and that's how Swain Mats started. And then Swain Mats was sold to Dollamar. Yeah. So now we're together. You know, that was in 2008.
Which I'm sure makes your life probably a hell of a lot easier.
It did, yeah. But I ran Swain Mats for 15 years before I sold it. And yeah, it was getting Swain Mats into the martial arts. Ernie Reyes Senior was one of my first customers.
Yeah, dude. East Coast martial arts.
Yeah, West Coast
martial arts.
And then and it's good to see Ernie Jr. here.
Which is also incredible. I'm gonna try to flag him down whenever I can.
Yeah, he's a great guy. Yeah. And then, but you know, like my first event was I went to one of the NASCA, right?
Yeah.
So and I had no clue.
That's where I grew up.
Yeah. So I didn't know anything about NASCA. Yeah. So I went to one of the big tournaments, concrete taped off.
Yep.
And I'm looking down, and I'm from the judo world, you know, like I grew up on mats, and mats are safe, and I'm thinking these guys are nuts. Like they're doing jumps and flips on concrete.
Yeah, and people used to get knocked out cold on them damn things too.
That's where I started, and I went to the promoter, who I forgot who it was, and I said, "Yeah, these mats. You guys need mats." No, we don't. They've been doing it on this for years. Like, no, this is how it's done. And I'm like, no, you guys need mats.
Wait till that first lawsuit comes, buddy.
So I kind of got into it with him, and then I realized, like, oh man, I've got a long way to go, you know, because to change the mentality.
Changing mentality in the martial arts is like trying to change a religion.
Exactly.
It is an uphill battle that typically winds up you talking to someone who's not listening.
Right.
They're in their head, they're like, "Yep, soup."
So Ernie Reyes Senior was one of the first ones to change, and then once he did it, then everybody said, "Oh, Ernie's done it."
One of the most respected martial artists ever.
And then it kind of snowballed.
And I think I commend you for that, because that was a change that was needed for safety. And that's one of my personal 5 rules about staying legitimate is safety.
Yeah.
You know, if you're training in these unsafe training environments where somebody could seriously get hurt, well, not only are you opening yourself up for a lawsuit, but I think you're teaching something that's unrealistic.
Right.
You know, because there's a difference between teaching for self-defense and teaching how to protect yourself, and a difference between trying to teach it so realistically that you will get hurt.
Right.
And you know, you're preparing. You're not doing the real activity. You're preparing for the activity that may or may not occur. Yeah. And if you're not an asshole, chances are good it won't occur very much.
Right.
You know. Let's see. I got a few more on here. Let's see. Boom. Awesome. How about in technique? Self-defense versus competition. Are people training more for points than to finish the fight? Do you think sorry, it is very difficult to read. Do you think this omits the techniques that will be lost for future generations in judo?
Yeah, I get the question. I understand the question. But I don't think you can, in judo, you know, it's repetition, you know. I don't think there's a way to train like for a strategy where you're gonna like point the person out. You know, it's not as bad as Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, you know, where you can stalling, kind of do it that way. You know, you really have to, you know, in judo you learn throws. First of all, you got to know how to fall, right? So
of course.
You're going to take fall. So you learn, you know, in order to throw this person, you have to get thrown to understand, you know, you get thrown a lot.
Yeah.
And then B, you have to understand the kazushi, you know, which is off balancing, and that only comes from grabbing a person physically and working out with them. It's like wrestling, you know. So there's no way you're going to learn this, you know, through videos or from me just telling you to do it. You got to really have to grab somebody, move around with them.
Well, I mean, the goal of judo, I mean, the ultimate goal, I guess, very similar to Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, which would be to submit done. Right. Would be like an ippon, right? Right. And then so I would imagine if you did that to anyone on the street and dunked them on their head,
it would hurt. It would probably hurt. But there's not a lot of that I see street people training judo for street judo. You know what I mean? It's just
so you mainly you really feel like it's not really.
It's a physical activity.
Okay.
You know, whether it's a sport, whether you take it into a sport and go compete, or whether you just do it physically to, you know, get fit or just for self-defense. Self-defense, you're learning it as you grab somebody and try to take them down or trying to stop them from
so it's kind of built in, I guess.
Kind of built in.
I got you. Okay.
So I don't think you can separate them.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like I understand Now, when you're training for, I mean, what they're talking about is, in a tournament, maybe you can stall a little bit, but that's part of the game. That's like basketball. You're up by 20. You're not going to play as hard.
Yeah, of course. So I got you. Yeah. So you don't really feel like one takes away from the other.
No.
Okay.
It's like wrestling. Like, how would you train for wrestling, sport wrestling, or street wrestling?
That is a fantastic comparison. I've never thought about it, but that is a fantastic comparison because wrestling. You cannot take away, like, you can't take self-defense out of wrestling. Right. It is do the thing. Do that.
So I would say it's similar to that.
Cool. Now, I like to close. Let's see here. Let me just check to see. I like to get everybody's little things. All old school had wood or tile floors, and people weren't so happy. Yeah. Well, welcome to the new millennium. Yeah, people will sue your ass. They will sue it off. Thank you, John. I appreciate your comments and your questions. But to wrap it up here, because I've taken a lot, I could literally sit here and talk to you for hours.
No problem.
Very enlightening. So I always ask two things before I leave. So one is I love stories from the dojo. I love stories that no one would ever know unless you were there in that room, which is typically in the dojo at that time. And you've been in the dojo for, I'm sure, for a very long time. And I'm sure you probably have at least one story that might stick out to you that might be a storytelling type thing.
Right. Yeah.
So let's hear it, man.
Well, to me, when I think of hard training, I think of Japan.
Okay.
So, people, even judo, young judo kids coming up like, oh, I want to go to Japan and train. It's like, do you really? Because, they're going 25 rounds, like 3-hour practices. And, you walk in and you're going to stand out there 5 minutes times 25 and you're going to get a sash and, you can't exactly just go 5 rounds and leave, you got to stay out, But it's funny, but it's not funny, I guess. So they do this thing called kangeko in Japan, which is kind of like summer training or winter training. Okay. They have 2 kangekos. And it's based around like the university, because I was training at Nihon University, they call it Nichidai. And it was a room, not a very big dojo, but it was maybe 40 guys. Yeah. Most of the top training centers there, they have like 100 to 150, but Nichidai is kind of a small, but known for their kind of toughness. So it was a winter kangeko, starts at 5 o'clock in the morning. Yeah. It's snowing out. It's, it's winter in Japan. It's cold. It's, 30 degrees outside. And then they open up all the windows and it's wind's coming in and it's 30 degrees out. They open up all the windows, and you're in your judo. You're not allowed to wear a.
Now, were
there's no rash guard.
No, were they matted like tatami?
Oh no, it was mats. Okay, but it was hard mats. Yeah. It has a sprung floor underneath it, but the actual mat is much harder than a normal mat in Japan. So so you walk into the dojo and it's like, you're shivering. Yeah. So you have to grab somebody, and then they do like 20 minutes of warming up, which means uchikomis, repetition fit-ins. So you warm up a little bit, uchikomis, you get out there. And I was a friend of mine, Bob Berlin, he was on the Olympic team in '84. So he had a bad ankle, so he had to get it taped. Yeah. And they don't even tape over there, right? They use wrap, like a cloth wrap.
Okay, makes sense.
They don't believe in tape. So I had some tape. Yeah. So I taped Bob's foot up, and I'm not a doctor, but I kind of knew because I taped my own foot up. And I probably taped it a little bit too tight, So
in the 30-degree weather.
So I see Bob out there, and you don't want to sit. You got to just keep moving to stay alive. And his foot, is starting to turn blue and purple, and he was about to die, So about two into it, he comes over. He goes, "Take it off! My foot's gonna die!" So I'm ripping the tape off, and I'm laughing.
Yeah, right? Of course.
but that's the type of training. I mean, it was so hard on your body. Yeah. That I really couldn't explain it talking to you about it. You'd have to go through it and really experience it to understand.
When I was in I was on a sport martial arts team for 2 years, and we traveled internationally and we competed and fought a lot. I got hit in the head a lot. That's why I'm so cognitive today. It ruined my modeling. But when I went, our sponsor, he said you had to compete in 3 divisions in karate. And in karate and sport karate, there are tons of divisions.
Lots of divisions.
Lots of them. So you can do like kata, open hand kata. You can do traditional kata. You can do
Right.
like weapons. You can do creative forms. You can do full contact kickboxing was available, semi-contact, light contact.
Right.
You could do point karate and all that stuff, right? So I only wanted to fight, but my sponsor made us. And most tournaments, you had to do like at least one kata. Like they didn't have enough fighting divisions for weight classes. So our guy who came in, he was he would go train in Japan. His instructor was from Japan.
Right.
And it was a traditional karate. And he told me that one of the toughest things he had to do was after the classes were over, you would go in and you would scrub the floor. So everybody got a water, and it was like soapy water, and it was like a rag. And you would go and everybody would line up on one end of the dojo, and they would scrub the floor, but then they would wring it out, and they had to wring it out until they could use that to dry the floor.
Right.
And I was like, dude, and this man's grips were like insane because he had to do this for years and years and years. So that traditional Japanese training, I think that a lot of us in America probably are missing out on, but maybe we're not missing it.
Yeah, no, these guys would sweep the floor before, afterward. They would clean it. You know, all the freshmen, the freshmen did it, you know, but every year, you know, they new freshmen.
Yeah, that little hazing.
Yeah, a little bit.
Yeah, clean the
Those
floor.
are more stories that I can't.
Oh yeah, I got you. I understand. But, a suit. Are you a part of the elite now? No, I was actually a little. This is a conference. So this is the ProMac conference. So there's a lot of business seminars. There's business seminars. There's physical seminars, which is why Mike was here. He's teaching some judo. I got to train yesterday with Dwayne Ludwig, which is awesome. Eric Paulson's here. So there's a mixture of different seminars going on here. And it's a great opportunity to knock out a whole bunch of interviews with some martial artists that I would have to normally travel to see. So I'm wearing the suit today because, one, I don't want people to keep pulling me into physical seminars like they were trying to do yesterday. And when you wear a suit, they typically leave you alone. And two, I've been a little under the weather. So by wearing this, it makes it look like I'm a little less a part of something to be dragged into physically. So I'm not down for that. So I put the suit on. People typically leave you alone unless you talk to them. But anyway, yeah. Am I a part of the elite? No, I'm not a part of the elite. I can tell you that. Broke as shit. But I love you guys, so I do this anyway, because I think that we need to keep martial arts legitimate. So last thing, if you could just do me a favor and just plug yourself or anything that you have going on, or anything, ways to get a hold of you, any products you want to plug. It's an open forum to tell people about you.
Sure. Right now, besides teaching at San Jose State Judo, I'm helping the program going.
Nice. So you were there and then you went back to teach. That is amazing.
I helped teach there. But besides that, I'm part owner in a martial arts academy, Gold Medal Martial Arts. It's in Belmont, California. Partners with Herb Perez. He was the first Olympic gold medalist for Taekwondo.
Nice.
So it's actually both of our ideas to put Olympic Taekwondo, Olympic Judo kind of together to give more of a, ground and also, striking and throwing. That's just awesome. Kind of make it well-rounded.
Yeah, that's a good idea.
He trained really hard, Korea, the whole thing. So he gets the hard training. And they really know how to run a really good school. They've got 4 schools. I'm only partners in 1, but anyway, that's one of my businesses. But my main business is still mats. Again, Dalamar Sports Surfaces. They manufacture everything in the USA. Nice. In Fort Worth, Texas. My office is in California because I'm not moving to Texas. Nice. But and I like to surf. So,
okay, I gotcha.
So Dalamar Sports Services. You can find it on the internet. We do wrestling. We're one of the biggest providers of wrestling mats in the country. Gymnastics, we have probably 80% of the gymnastics business. Cheerleading, martial arts, and now and fitness. We're a lot of big,
which is awesome.
Yeah, fitness is booming right now. A lot of conversion with martial arts. There's a lot of big fitness facilities that need more to add more value. They don't want to sell $10 a month memberships anymore. So they add value by bringing in martial arts. And so that's kind of something that's happening in the fitness martial arts world.
Which is smart for the gym. Why not? And perceived value is huge too. Like adding something like a mat into your facilities.
And the family can work out while the kids, do martial arts or, so it makes sense.
Yeah, definitely. Well, Mike, I appreciate you. It was an awesome interview.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you for the interview.
Yeah, man. And then if anybody gets the opportunity, this will be on our YouTube channel. I'm going to, once I get back, I'm going to edit this last part off. But once I get back, for anybody who cares, if you didn't get a chance to see the entire interview, I'm going to be taking it off of Facebook when I get back. and putting it up on our YouTube channel. It'll be there forever. And then I'll be sure to tag you all that stuff. And then so that way you guys get a little more insight.
Tokyo 2020. That's where the Olympics started in 1964 in Tokyo.
Yeah.
And it's finally back to Tokyo next year. 2020 is in the Olympics in Tokyo.
Are you going to be there?
I'm going to be there to watch it.
Nice.
Yeah. I competed in the venue that's going to have the Olympics. Is the same venue in 1964. But obviously, it's built up better now.
Which is awesome, man. Well, hopefully I'll be able to get some clout and get there.
See you guys.
Catch you later.